Hey, Comic Impact. It's Rick Hansen here. Smash on the website, smash under the Comics and Coffee column that I do on a weekly basis around here. And welcome back to the second of our Smash of the Month. I have ravaged the entire library of comics that I usually dig through for the month of October, and I found some pretty tough choices this time around. I found some really good single issues. You really can't lose with anything by Edgar Allan Poe and the legendary Eisner-nominated Richard Corbin, The Raven and the Red Death from Dark Horse Comics. This was a real good pick. For those of you who want something a little bit more mainstream, there is Captain America, the Living Legend, #2, which was just discussed on the latest Pick of the Week by Simon and Noel, the newest valued acquisition for Comic Impact, and as a columnist and podcaster. Now, thanks to her, I was able to learn that issue 2 of Captain America, Living Legend, was not drawn by Adi Granoff, which the first one was, but you can really hardly tell. The work by Augustin Alessio is spot on and a very good imitation, if not an homage, or just maybe that's his own style, and it was pulled off so well that it's difficult to really be distracted by the fact that there's a change. Anyway, as far as the single issues go of the month of October, Wild Blue Yonder #3 was definitely the best one of the bunch by IDW. This is a really good story, and it takes you through highs and lows and a huge amount of story packed into a small number of pages. But as promised last time, the Smash of the Month work is not just about single issues, but it's about the best darn thing to happen in all of the month of October. That could be trades, that could be graphic novels, as was last time. It could be kids stuff, adult stuff, or it could be even a group of things, in which case here we are with the Smash of the Month for October 2013, and we call it a little thing called the Arms of the Octopus. Now, there are 2 events going on in Marvel at present. The Avengers event of Infinity and the X-Men event of Battle of the Atom. Each one of them involves various heroes in the Marvel Universe, including the Superior Spider-Man, who is defending Earth at the time of Avengers Infinity. You have the Indestructible Hulk, who is out in space, battling with the Avengers, against the extraterrestrial threats that we face. And then you have the X-Men, including the all-new X-Men, who are in the Battle of the Atom story. But somewhere in between all of that, you've got all of these people who are being involved in another event, which, there's always a lot of discussion to be had about how can all these heroes be doing so many different things at the same time, which it's really not all that relevant. What is relevant here is that between these different happenings, you've got all of these different heroes who are taking part in this particular adventure. Now, this one nearly slipped under the radar for a lot of people because it wasn't being as mass marketed and covering as huge of a span of the universe, with all these major implications like Infinity and Battle of the Atom. But it's a 3-issue event where you cover first part. It takes place in All New X-Men Special, where it has little heading on the bottom, the Arms of the Octopus, part 1 of 3. And part 2 took place in Indestructible Hulk Special, which was also, still gave you the little heading on there. And for some reason, the cover artist, which is, let's see here, the cover artist is Alexander Lozano. He drew in here A-Bomb, which, A-Bomb isn't in this comic, so not sure what happened there, but it was probably just a little miscommunication in editorial. And then issue 3, the finale, Arms of the Octopus, part 3 of 3, in Superior Spider-Man. Now, this had the additional of Team Up thrown in there, which didn't say a special like the other two. It says team up, which Marvel kind of does that sometimes. I've got shelves of comics from Marvel that have trades where there's like 3 trades or 4 trades in one particular storyline, and they in the very last one they change up the packaging. Somehow the jacket gets changed somehow, which is really annoying sometimes because you want a little uniformity, especially when something is going to be sitting on your bookcase. Anyway, so this is a 3-part story. Mike Costa, he wrote all 3 issues. You might be familiar with his work on G.I. Joe, which was absolutely phenomenal. He did G.I. Joe Cobra as well as some of the other stories that they did. And he hasn't really done much in the way of Marvel and DC, the big 2. But that might change after people get a look at what his work did here. The pencils and inks were done for all 3 issues by respectively Chris Anka, Jacob Wyatt, and Michael Dialinus. I almost messed that one up. And the covers for all 3 of them are done by Alexander Lozano, which might explain why the editorial discrepancy took place there, because he might have done the covers before the whole story was flushed out. Colors and letters are from Rachel Rosenberg, Jordi Belair, and VC's Corey Pettit. And it really comes down to 3 parts, 3 different issues, which each one does a good job of standing on its own in terms of just telling parts of the story, and letting you dive in whenever you're ready. The very first issue starts off real simple. The all-new X-Men are in New York City, and they're checking out the town. Nothing is really going on. Just getting the feel of their environment. And McCoy, he becomes smitten. McCoy, as everybody knows, is Beast, by a girl in the park reading Anna Sexton, apparently some poetry. And while Bobby Drake, he's checking out the female yoga and aerobics class off in there, and what teenagers are wont to do. McCoy, he's drawn to brains, and so he runs over there, strikes up a conversation, but then a burglary, a mugging, takes his attention away, and he has to intervene. Well, once she finds out that he's a mutant, he thinks that she is not going to want anything to do with him, but she says, in response to him saying that he's a mutant, she says that's so cool, and which totally blows away Bobby and Hank, because they come from a time where mutants are completely ostracized. Hey, just to bring you up to speed, if none of you are familiar with the all-new X-Men, they are not the X-Men of current times, who have experienced all the things like the Dark Phoenix saga and Mutant Massacre and all the things that have been going on. But these are from the early days when they were all teenagers and just starting out. They were brought into modern times by the X-Men of the present through a time machine to teach Scott Summers of the present the error of his ways and try to bring him back to the heroic and ideals that from where he came. Anyway, so with that stage set, the new lady that Hank McCoy meets, named Molly, she leads him to her professor, Dr. David Jude, over at Empire State University, who actually had taught Dr. McCoy or Hank McCoy before he was a doctor in the past. But then suddenly, out of the blue, real bizarre, Doc Ock shows up. Otto Octavius with arms, portly, bowl haircut, goggles, everything, and McCoy, he says, all right, stand back, Molly, I got this, and starts battling, but he's out of his league. And then the other X-Men, they join in. They find McCoy and they join in the fight, and they're taking on Dr. Ock. They're still overmatched for the most part, but it's pretty much a dead even. Then they're like, hey, isn't this one of Spider-Man's villains? And then all of a sudden, Superior Spider-Man, he shows up, and he's like, what the heck? And if for any of those of you who don't know, Spider-Man, he is now not really Peter Parker. He is in body, but not in mind, in soul, because Peter Parker died. And then Dr. Octopus downloaded his consciousness into Peter Parker's brain, and now uh, he's the superior Spider-Man. I guess he says, well, I've got all the tools, I've got all the talent here, the gifts. I'm gonna try to be the best Spider-Man that there ever was. And I really didn't understand all that much about how Doc Ock fit into the into the world, whether it was just Doc Ock in Spidey's body now. But now, when you read this, you kind of get an understanding of that it's not just him taking over Spider-Man's body, but but he possesses all of Peter's memories too. And that means that all of the experiences that formed Peter into a hero are now part of Otto Octavius. So he seems to be genuinely trying to be a hero, be a force for good in the world, and it gives me a little bit of a different outlook on what I thought was the nature of Dr. Spider-Puss, which apparently the internet has grown to refer to as Spock. Okay, so anyway, they all gang together and they capture the Dr. Octopus that's running a rampage, but they can't really deal with him due to the fact that he's radioactive. And what is he radiating? But gamma radiation, gamma energy. So, who do you call when there's a problem with gamma radiation? But the foremost expert on gamma radiation in the world, Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk. Yes. All right, but he's not exactly available at the moment because he is the Hulk, who is bashing some giant spiders out in the desert. Well, Shield comes down, and as soon as he's finished bashing those spiders into spider pulp, they calm him down in a quite adorable scene by they smothering him with a big tank full of puppies, live puppies, and nothing bad happens to the puppies. The Hulk just loves puppies, and so they get him to calm down, and now he's Doc Banner again. So they bring him along, and he's curious. He wants to investigate this particular mystery, and he works with the X-Men, particularly McCoy and Dr. Jude, and they have some scenes where they are going through experiments and trying to figure out, what he is and why he's radiating gamma energy, and everything just goes in a very sciencey type way, but it's kind of fun. You get to see Doc Banner and Hank McCoy in their element, in the not out there bashing things and fighting villains, but in these labs, in these old underfunded Empire State labs, and trying to come up with solutions outside of Shield and outside of the X labs and everything, because they don't want anybody getting wind of this and influencing things with their own interests. But suddenly their studies are interrupted by a bunch of crashing outside the campus. And who do they see when they pop their heads outside? But it's the Abomination. The Hulk's enemy, the Abomination, also a gamma irradiated foe, which there's no surprise that gamma radiation's involved when it's the Abomination. But Doc Ock, it's just weird. So. But he's out there smashing stuff, and Banner, he just throws his hands up and says, "Well, I'm obviously out of this investigation because I have to stop the Abomination." And he hulks out, and they proceed to smash the dickens out of one another. And so the X-Men kids and Spider-Man, they decide, well, best thing to do here is that Hulk do what Hulk does, and we got to take this Doc Ock, person, clone, LMD, whatever it is, and we got to get him back to his own time, because Doc Ock is dead in this world. Doc Ock doesn't, he's obviously from the past, just like the all-new X-Men. All right, so they decide they're going to fly him out to him and his arms, his mechanical arms, because those are obviously from the past too, because Doc Ock, who is now Spider-Man, he doesn't have those arms anymore, and his body is dead. So he has to be from the past. So they're going to take him to the time machine that's over in Westchester at the X-Men's mansion, and they're going to send him back to where he belongs. At the same time, McCoy and his new friend Molly, they end up falling into this cavern, a crevasse created by the battle between Hulk and Abomination. And inside they find evidence which indicates that all is not what it seems, particularly who is the person responsible for these strange events. So without spoiling everything and telling you how it all pans out and who's who and what's what, um, they get through a series of events where the Spider-Man and the X-Men, they seem to get blown up by a shield transport. The remaining heroes have to fight off the super powered enemy that comes to light, and along with a bunch of powerful robots at his disposal. And then Banner, Molly, and McCoy, they've got to find a way to negate this said maniac's particular power set, and all the while Spider-Man tries to find creative ways of blending the young mutants' powers together to win the day, and in ways that they don't even understand, because they come from a time where their youth and inexperience leads them to barely understand how to use their powers and what to do. So that's pretty much all I'm gonna pull out there right now, because you guys should read this for yourself. It's really good. And the artwork in all three issues is deceptively simple, but with and leaves the complexity to parts that deserve it, like scenes of the Empire State Lab and campus. But it's got a lot of emphasis on movement and positioning of the characters and expressions, and drawing the eye to key points of note in the frames. So it's very, very good and subtle artwork, and doesn't try to overcomplicate things with extra details that don't need to be there to tell the story. But everybody, you can tell who's who at all times, and I'd say it's definitely on a scale of 1 to 10, the artwork should be about a 9. It's easy to say that each of the heroes gets their own consideration in terms of spacing throughout the story, but the story is essentially focused on Hank McCoy and Dr. Spider-Puss. But I didn't quite understand the dynamic of Octavius, Spider-Man's body before now, but it really makes him more compelling than I had previously assumed before. There were some great lines throughout this one, and without getting again into too many spoilers as to what the situations were, when they go through the park and they're just kind of checking out the surroundings, Bobby Drake, he sees the women doing aerobics, and he says, "I knew spandex would catch on," with a big huge grin on his face, because he's checking out the ladies wearing their tight clothes. Hank, he points out when Bobby says that when Bobby says that he doesn't like the idea of Hank going off with Molly, Hank says, because he's seen his future self, and he says, "I'm going to turn into a giant blue homunculus in the future, and pretty girls won't be inviting me pretty much anywhere anymore. So let me go do this now while I have the chance." And it's Scott Summers and Jean Grey. They're going to see a movie to try to get away from the crowds, and Scott is saying, 3D, is that a thing? I can't even wear these glasses anyway. A couple more. Spider-Man and Jean Grey have a nice exchange when they first meet in battling the Doc Ock. He points out, "You, Jean Grey clone," and he's about to give them her an order, but she says, "I'm not a clone," and he responds with, "Oh, I'm sure that's just what the first clone said," and just assuming that there was like a series of clones or something. And then the last one, Hank McCoy and Bruce Banner. After the battle with the Abomination, Bruce wakes up, and he stands up and he starts postulating about what their next course of action is, and Hank's like, "Excuse me, doctor, but you're not wearing any clothes," and Banner says, "Oh, really? The pants usually stay on. That's odd." Which it makes a lot of sense, because clothes, they really shouldn't contract and expand like that, but it's just one of those things that they've always done in the comics, because they don't want Banner to be looking indecent. So the everything about this story is nuanced. You know, it has some poignant and touching moments, like Molly telling Hank in her very last scene how gorgeous his handwriting is, because everybody who reads X-Men in the current continuity know that that Hank has progressively more trouble using tools and writing instruments because of his evolving mutation. So it's kind of a sad compliment that she gives him, and then Banner and Cyclops, they have a discussion on why Banner doesn't destroy the Hulk and all the strife and pain that the Hulk causes in the world by ending Banner's life. And then Banner explains to him what good he thinks that he does in the world and all that. So it's got highs and lows, and it's really a lot of fun. I think that this is definitely worth checking out. It's gonna be a trade or a hardcover that comes out. You can guarantee it, so you might be able to pick it up on store shelves right now, or you might just wait for the trade and order it from DCBS, which will probably be listed in the next previews or so. But the Arms of the Octopus, all new X-Men special. They're all one-shots. All new Indestructible Hulk, Arms of the Octopus 2 of 3, and all new X-Men. I keep saying all new X-Men. Every book has the all new X-Men in them. Basically has all the characters in it, but it's very good, and I highly recommend it. So until next month, smash on and fairly well.